The Nintendo Switch has quickly become one of the best platforms ever to play independent games. These type of games just feel absolutely perfect on the Switch, whether you play on your TV or in handheld mode. And while much of the game community really focuses on big AAA games, I believe that indies offer some of the most unique, interesting, and fun experiences in the entire industry. However, because the Nintendo Switch has so many great independent games, it can be hard to figure out exactly what to play next. And that's why today we're going to take a look at the top 25 best independent games on the Nintendo Switch. Now, I'm not going to lie, I had a hard time compiling this list to just 25 games. In fact, my first draft of this list had over 50 games, and that's a testament to how many great independent games the Switch truly has. As always though, this is only my opinion, and if I don't mention some of your favorites, make sure to let me know. With that said, let's get right into the list. And to kick this list off, I have Spiritfarer, which is one of the most emotional games you're going to play. It's more or less about letting go and dealing with death as you form a relationship with your passengers and help them move on to the afterlife. It can be incredibly sad at times or bittersweet, but it's the narrative that I think is both well done and thought-provoking. There are also a ton of things to do in Spiritfarer, as it is a management sim, such as platforming, fishing, gathering materials, along with several other activities. But it's the emotional bonds that you create with your passengers that makes it such a unique and engaging experience. When I first saw Rime, it immediately reminded me of one of my all-time favorite games, Eco. However, when you actually play Rime, you realize it's its own experience, and it really is a fantastic adventure game. There are plenty of puzzles to solve, there's platforming, and it even has a nice story to follow. From the very beginning, it places you in a world that you want to explore, and that is hard to do in games. Now, this game did launch with a lot of performance and graphical issues, but they have fixed much of that since its initial release, and Rime is just too good not to put on this list. Independent games are no strangers to being just a little bit artistic, but Gris is something special. This is one of the most beautiful and artistic games that you're ever going to play, but that would mean nothing if it wasn't a good game as well. Luckily though, Gris has wonderful platforming and some interesting puzzles. While it is a little on the short side, its poetic gameplay and mesmerizing world will surely have you enjoying every minute of Gris. Superland finally made its way to the Nintendo Switch, and I think this is quietly one of the most interesting games available on the platform. The developers explained this game as being a mix between Zelda, Metroid, and Portal, and honestly, it fits. And I know Nintendo fans love Zelda and Metroid, so that should already have you very interested. But it is a 3D Metroidvania style game where you gain new abilities to reach new locations. This will involve combat, platforming, and puzzles, all of which are excellently done in Superland, so if you like Zelda or Metroid, you might want to try Superland. Speaking of Metroid, Axiom Verge is probably the closest thing you're going to get to a 2D Metroid game that's not made by Nintendo. With that said, it's also brilliant. When I played this game, I could not put it down because of how much fun I was having. It does have that really retro art style to it, but the combat and the exploration of finding your next location is just so well done. I also think that the boss encounters in Axiom Verge was just absolutely fantastic, and this is just an overall really good game. Now, if you're looking for more of a 3D collectathon platformer, then Hat in Time is one that you can't miss. Hat in Time takes you back to the era of 90s 3D platformers, and honestly, this is a genre that I greatly miss. We really don't get games like this much anymore, but Hat in Time not only brings back that nostalgic gameplay, but it's also among the best ever made. It really is that good, so if you like games like Banjo-Kazooie and Super Mario 64, then you might want to check out Hat in Time. Hyperlight Drifter is all about its gameplay, and it has phenomenal game design. I mean, it's also a gorgeous game to look at with its pixel art, but what really stands out to me is its level design, challenging gameplay, and its combat. The combat is so fluid, fast, but also precise. You dash around, you melee your enemies, and then you can even shoot them, but that's a catch. In order to get ammo to shoot, you have to melee your enemies, so it's always encouraging you to play smart, but also get you up close and personal. While growing up, there are certain games that I always dreamed of, and hoped that they would become a reality one day. Well, I can't say that I ever dreamed of a game like Untitled Goose Game, and I can certainly say that I didn't expect it to be near as good as what it is. Pretty much the entire game is playing a very naughty goose that continuously trolls people. It's goofy, but it's also clever, because there's always objectives to complete. These objectives can range from being simple to being a little bit more thought-provoking. But one thing is for sure, Untitled Goose Game will constantly have you smiling as you play this wonderful little game. Stardew Valley is by far one of the most addictive games that I've ever played, and it's not an uncommon thing for some to put hundreds of hours into this farming simulator. It looks simple on the surface, but there's just so much to do, whether that be farming, build relationships with the community, and it even has dungeon crawling aspects with RPG mechanics. Yeah, this game is surprisingly very deep. If you do like these type of simulators though, then Stardew Valley is a no-brainer, but just be warned, you might be putting a little bit more time into it than you first realize. In many ways, The Messenger is a tale of two. See, it actually has a really interesting mechanic that allows you to time travel and play in two different eras. In one era you can play in 8-bit, while in the other it's 16-bit, and the transition here is done masterfully. They even have two different soundtracks of each song to play in 8-bit and 16-bit, but that isn't the only thing that changes in The Messenger. It does start out as an action 2D platformer, similar to something like Ninja Gaiden, but however, it does eventually turn into more of a Metroidvania style game. Now, I'm personally okay with that because I love this genre, but for some, they may not like this transition as much. However, both editions is done very well, and The Messenger is absolutely one of the greatest games all around. Supergiant Games has become one of the best independent developers in the entire industry. We will talk a little bit more about that in just a bit, but Transistor is a superb action RPG with a fantastical sci-fi setting, as your silent protagonist obtains a sword that talks to her. That may sound a little strange, but Transistor has a very well done story with phenomenal voice acting. The bread and butter of this game, though, is in its combat. You can go out and fight with a more fast-paced approach, or take things a little bit slower and be more strategic. You choose how you want to play, but either way, this is a must-have game if you're a fan of RPGs or Supergiant games. To this day, it saddens me that more people don't know about Splasher. This is a brilliant 2D platformer. It plays very similar to the Rayman games, but it has this Portal-esque puzzle mechanic to it. See, you actually spray different color paints on the floor, which all have their own unique property. One might make you bounce, while another is sticky and has you running across ceilings. That's the thing though, it's actually a very fast-paced game, and for speedrunners, this game is a dream. Like I said though, it seems like not many people actually know about Splasher, but do yourself a favor and check this game out. You won't regret it. Undertale absolutely exploded online when it first released. Fans adore this game, and it probably has some of the most passionate fans that I've ever seen online. There's a good reason though. Undertale has an old school art style to it that looks very similar to Earthbound, one of the best RPGs ever made. It's the gameplay and story though that really sets it apart. While in most games your main focus is to defeat your enemies, in Undertale however, you have the choice to befriend all of your enemies. That can be a bit of a puzzle at times, but if you figure out each little riddle, you can complete the entire game without destroying a single enemy. It also has great music, the story and its characters are charming, and it's just the whole package. If you told me Shovel Knight was a Super Nintendo game and I didn't know any better, I would have probably believed you. This game looks and feels like it came straight out of the early 90s, and I mean that in the best possible way. There's a good reason that people love these type of games so much, and Shovel Knight does it masterfully. The platforming feels great, it's challenging, the boss designs are fun, and because there are so many characters to play as, you can constantly change how you play the game. It surprisingly got a lot of content, and I'd highly recommend Shovel Knight. There have been a lot of fun games on this list, but even then, Katana Zero really stands out. This is an insanely brutal, fast, and fun game to play. In each level, you're challenged with clearing each room of various types of enemies by rolling, dodging, swinging your sword, deflecting bullets, and slowing down time. You may be just one person, but it only takes one swing of the blade to dismantle your foe, and with so many options to explore, you'll find yourself having a blast in trying to solve the solution and how to reach the end. If there is one way to explain Katana Zero, it's simply fun. The first thing you probably notice about Monster Boy is its eye-popping art style and animations. I mean, this game looks phenomenal with its vibrant colors and anime-inspired art. Beyond that though, Monster Boy has a lot going for it. It is a Metroidvania style game, but because you can change into several different monsters, the gameplay is different than any other within the genre. There is a lot of puzzles as each monster has unique abilities, which not only changes how you approach combat, but also how you approach the world. Now this game is a little pricey at $40, but it's completely worth it. Dead Cells can be a bit intimidating on the surface. It's a roguelike Metroidvania, meaning that if you die, you will have to start back from the beginning. That is a strange combination, and it sounds brutal, but that's all part of the fun. While if you die you are severely punished, you're also rewarded with each playthrough as you unlock new weapons and abilities that carries over to your next. As time goes on, it will get easier and easier until you eventually reach the end, making it both a challenging and gratifying experience. It also never gets dull thanks to its randomly generated aspects and switches layouts and enemy locations. Now Crosscode is a game that really took me by surprise. This is almost a mix of Zelda games in how you approach dungeons with all the puzzles and Trials of Mana with its combat. There are a lot of combat options in Crosscode, and that's the thing. This is a true RPG, where you choose how you level up in the game. That's not all though, because Crosscode has a very engaging story. So you're actually playing in an MMO world, and it does feel like an actual MMO, but single player instead. The characters are well written, and there are a lot of content as well. You can easily put 40+ hours into Crosscode if you want. Honestly, this is one of the best RPGs from top to bottom on the Nintendo Switch. To this day, YookaLaylee has been one of the most successful crowdfunded video game projects. Now the first game was more similar to games like Banjo-Kazooie, but the second game went in a different direction and is more inspired by games like Donkey Kong Country. This does make sense considering they have several rare veterans which worked on the original Donkey Kong Country games, and you can absolutely tell. YookaLaylee in the Impossible Lair is a great 2D platformer and has that collectathon aspect to it. Playtonic did something interesting with this game though, because in the overworld, it's not just static where you just choose what level you play. Instead, it almost plays out like a top-down Zelda game where you solve puzzles and unlock new levels. It's actually done very well, but at the end of the day, the main attraction is still the platforming, and you're not going to find much better than YookaLaylee in the Impossible Lair. Cuphead is another one of those games that really grabs you because of its art style. It almost looks like an old Disney animation, but what I think really surprises people when it comes to this game isn't how difficult it is. It may look like any other run-and-gun platformer, but it is brutally challenging, especially the boss encounters. Now Cuphead does go beyond just being a run-and-gun platformer though, and there are several shoot-'em-up sections as well, which is equally as fun. Unfortunately, this one is a little on the shorter side, but you know that also depends on how much you die. I really have no idea why more people don't seem to be talking about this game, but Bug Fables in my opinion is a masterpiece. Growing up, I was a big fan of Paper Mario, and after 1,000 Years Door, I've always wanted Nintendo to make another game similar to the first two. Well, to this day, Nintendo doesn't seem interested in that, but luckily we got Bug Fables, and it's everything that I wanted. They took the classic Paper Mario formula and just absolutely ran with it. It's charming, the turn-based combat is engaging, it's challenging, the story is interesting, and the list just goes on and on. I cannot praise this game enough, and it fits perfectly into the Nintendo Switch library. As I mentioned earlier, Supergiant Games has become one of the best independent developers in the entire industry, and Hades may be their best game yet. I'm typically not a big fan of roguelike games, but Hades is a master at what it does. Somehow they managed to intertwine a roguelike experience into a mesmerizing and an engaging story. That was a bit surprising to me, but the story really stands out in Hades thanks to its great cast of characters. So you're constantly trying to escape your father Hades and reach the world of the living, but that's no easy task, and each time you die, you're sent back to the beginning. However, dying in this game somehow doesn't feel like a punishing experience, because it allows you to interact with the characters around you, and they're one of the most interesting aspects of this game with good voice acting and engrossing dialogue. Of course, the combat as well is superb, and as you unlock more and more abilities and weapons to change your playstyle, you start to feel as if you're a real god. Hollow Knight is pretty much the Dark Souls of independent games. Yes, this is yet another Metroidvania-style game, but it's also debatably not just the best Metroidvania, but some may even believe this to be the absolute best independent game all around, and I completely understand why. Hollow Knight is a very challenging game, and has that risk-reward mechanic of losing all of your currency if you die, and you can't get back to your previous location. Then there's the boss encounters that are second to none, the world is grim and dark, but also oddly fascinating that encourages you to explore. It really is the combat though that's done so well. Again, it is very challenging, but that's what makes this game so special. You can upgrade your abilities to better deal with your enemies, but you also need to be precise with every single move. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is nothing short of a masterpiece. While this list has debuted a few different Metroidvania games, this one stands tall as maybe the best of the genre of all time. It plays different than others within the genre because there is a very heavy focus on its platforming, and in the past I have said that it feels just as good as games like Super Mario Bros. That's how good the platforming actually is, but they also put your platforming skills to the test. They have these boss sequences where every single jump matters in escaping, and those are both thrilling and brutally difficult. With that said, Ori also has a beautiful story, and you'll remember it for years and years, and even the combat feels great. Now technically Ori is owned by Microsoft, but it was developed by an independent studio, and because it was so good, I just couldn't leave it off this list. And the number one spot goes to none other than Celeste. Now, I've played a lot of 2D platformers over the years, but Celeste has easily become an all-time great within this celebrated genre. It's rather simple on the surface, giving you a few abilities such as jump, a dash in which you can move in whatever direction you choose, and then climb. However, that's really all you need in this game thanks to its brilliant level design. It's always throwing something new at you and puts your skills to the test with plenty of challenge. Then there's the story, and I did not expect this, but it has a very deep story that's really worth paying attention to. Platformers may not be known for that, but Celeste did it and did it very well. Celeste is great from top to bottom. Anyways though, that's it for this video, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.